A 21-year-old waitress marries a 72-year-old tycoon, his will reveals an unbelievable twists. The faint hum of a bustling diner echoed in the background as Emma wiped down the counters of the Lone Star Grill. The neon lights outside flickered against the dark Texan sky, casting long shadows across the room. At 21, Emma had mastered the art of blending a radiant smile with a heavy heart. Tonight, though, her usual spark seemed dim. She glanced at the clock above the door, the hands inching toward closing time. A sudden clink of the bell above the entrance startled her. She looked up to find an elderly man stepping inside. His tailored suit and polished shoes stood in stark contrast to the diner's worn vinyl booths and faded menus. His silver hair caught the light, and his cane tapped rhythmically against the tiled floor as he approached the counter. "We're about to close," Emma said, her voice polite but weary. The man smiled, his piercing blue eyes studying her intently. "I won't be long. Just a cup of coffee, if you don't mind." Emma hesitated before nodding. "Sure. Coming right up." As she poured the coffee, the man placed a crisp $20 bill on the counter. "Keep the change," he said, his voice rich and measured. Emma arched an eyebrow. "For a $2 coffee? That's generous." The man chuckled, the sound deep and warm. "Consider it an investment." Emma tilted her head. "An investment in what?" "In you," he said simply. "What's your name?" "Emma," she replied, her brow furrowing. "And you are?" "Nathaniel Greystone," he said, extending a hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Emma." She hesitated, then shook his hand. His grip was firm but gentle. "What brings you here so late, Mr. Greystone?" He took a sip of his coffee before answering. "Sometimes, life leads us to unexpected places. And in those places, we find unexpected people." Emma frowned, unsure how to respond. "Well, welcome to the Lone Star Grill. What can I do for you?" Nathaniel leaned forward, his gaze steady. "How would you like a way out of here?" Emma blinked. "Excuse me. I'm not here by accident," he said. "I've been looking for someone with potential, resilience, and character. I believe that someone is you." Emma laughed nervously. "This some kind of joke?" "Because if it is, it's not funny." Nathaniel shook his head. "No joke. I'm offering you an opportunity to change your life." She crossed her arms. "And what exactly are you offering?" Nathaniel's expression softened. "A partnership. A marriage, to be precise." Emma's jaw dropped. "I'm sorry, what?" "I'm 72, he said matter-of-factly. "I've built a fortune over my lifetime, but I have no heirs, no family. I want someone to share my legacy with, someone I can trust to carry it forward." Emma stared at him, her mind racing. "This is insane. You don't even know me." "Not yet," he admitted. "But I'd like to. And in return, I can offer you financial security, freedom from this place, and a chance to build a future you've only dreamed of." The weight of his words hung in the air. Emma's hands tightened around the edge of the counter. "And what do you get out of it?" "Companionship," he said simply. "And the peace of knowing my legacy is in capable hands." Emma shook her head. "This is crazy. I don't know if I can." Nathaniel stood, his cane tapping against the floor. "Think about it, Emma. I'll be in town for the next week. If you decide you're interested, call me." He slid a business card across the counter before turning toward the door. As the bell jingled behind him, Emma stared at the card in her hand. Nathaniel Greystone, it read, with a phone number printed below. Her heart pounded as questions swirled in her mind. Who was this man? And what did he want? The Lone Star Grill wasn't just a diner, it was a crossroads of dreams deferred. Perched on the edge of a quiet Texas town, it catered to truckers, locals, and the occasional wanderer. For Emma, it was more than a workplace, it was her reality, one she'd longed to escape since her teenage years. At 21, Emma carried herself with a determination born of necessity. Her father had left when she was 10, and her mother, though loving, had never fully recovered from the heartbreak. Bills piled up, and the weight of responsibility fell squarely on Emma's shoulders. She'd taken the diner job at 16, promising herself it was temporary. 5 years later, the promise felt like a cruel joke. Emma's days were an exhausting loop of serving coffee, cleaning tables, and deflecting the occasional unwanted advance from a rowdy customer. Her evenings were spent caring for her mother, whose health had begun to decline. Emma's one escape was her sketchbook, a battered spiral notebook where she captured fleeting visions of a brighter future. Art was her passion, a secret dream she kept buried beneath layers of practicality and survival. Despite her hardships, Emma's spirit remained unbroken. She was known for her quick wit and warm smile, qualities that endeared her to regulars like Old Joe, who tipped generously, and Maria, the diner's cook, who often slipped Emma an extra slice of pie. Yet, beneath the surface, Emma longed for more. She craved adventure, a life beyond the clattering plates and greasy countertops of the Lone Star Grill. Her aspirations seemed impossibly distant until the night Nathaniel Greystone walked into her life. At first glance, he seemed out of place in the modest diner, a man of wealth and refinement in a world of simplicity. His sudden proposition, marriage, legacy, and an escape from her stagnant existence, was both bewildering and tantalizing. But with every opportunity came risk. What did she know about this man? Could she trust him, or was she trading one set of chains for another? As Emma pondered Nathaniel's offer, memories of her father's broken promises and her mother's quiet sacrifices weighed heavily on her. This wasn't just about her, it was about ensuring her family's survival and finding a way to fulfill the dreams she'd nearly abandoned. For the first time in years, Emma felt the stirrings of hope. But hope, she knew, could be a dangerous thing. Emma stared at the business card long after Nathaniel Greystone had left the diner. The words on the sleek cardstock seemed to shimmer under the dim light, their promise both thrilling and unsettling. She slipped it into the pocket of her apron, unable to shake the encounter from her mind. The next day passed in a blur of routine. Emma poured coffee, cleared tables, and bantered with customers, but her thoughts were miles away. Now and then, her hand would brush against the card, a physical reminder of the stranger's cryptic offer. Was it real? Could she trust him? Or was it some elaborate ruse? Earth to Emma, Maria's voice broke through her thoughts as she slid a plate of pancakes onto the counter. You've been in a daze all morning. What's going on? Emma hesitated. Maria was more than just a coworker, she was a confidant, someone who'd been a pillar of support through Emma's toughest times. You ever feel like life throws you something so crazy you can't tell if it's a blessing or a curse? Emma asked. Maria raised an eyebrow. Like meeting a rich man in a diner? Emma's eyes widened. How did you? Maria chuckled. Honey, you're not exactly subtle. What happened? Did he leave you $1 million tip or something? Not quite, Emma said, pulling the card from her pocket. He wants to marry me. Maria's laughter echoed through the kitchen, but when Emma's expression didn't change, the older woman's smile faltered. Wait. You're serious? Dead serious. He said he's looking for someone to share his legacy. Said he'd take care of me and Mom, pay off the debts, everything. Maria's brow furrowed. Sounds too good to be true. What's the catch? Emma shrugged. That's the thing. I don't know. He seems genuine. But I can't tell if it's desperation talking or something worse. That evening, Emma returned home to the small, cluttered house she shared with her mother. Her mom was asleep on the couch, the television flickering softly. Emma knelt beside her, brushing a strand of gray hair from her face. The lines of exhaustion etched into her mother's features were a stark reminder of everything they'd endured. Taking a deep breath, Emma pulled out her phone and dialed the number on the card. It rang twice before a deep, familiar voice answered. Nathaniel Greystone. "It's Emma," she said, her voice trembling. I've been thinking about your offer." Silence hung on the line for a moment before Nathaniel spoke, his tone calm but assured. "And? I need to know why," Emma blurted out. "Why me? Why now?" "Because you're exactly what I've been looking for," Nathaniel replied. "Someone unafraid to take a chance. Someone who sees the world for what it is and still dares to dream." Emma's breath caught in her throat. This was no ordinary proposal, and Nathaniel Greystone was no ordinary man. Her life stood at a precipice, the weight of her decision pressing down on her like never before. "All right," she said finally, her voice steady. "Let's talk." The next morning, Emma found herself seated across from Nathaniel Greystone in a private booth at a downtown cafe, the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafting between them. The setting was worlds away from the Lone Star Grill, sleek, modern, and buzzing with an energy that left Emma slightly breathless. Nathaniel studied her carefully, his demeanor calm but commanding. "I'm glad you called," he began, folding his hands on the table. "I'd like to be as transparent as possible about my intentions." Emma shifted uneasily in her seat, gripping her coffee cup. "I'm still not sure what to think about all this," she admitted. "It feels like I've stepped into someone else's life." Nathaniel smiled faintly. "That's understandable. Offers like this don't come around every day." "That's an understatement," Emma muttered. Nathaniel leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady. "Let me explain. I built my fortune from nothing. My parents were farmers, we struggled to make ends meet. I left home at 16 and worked my way through life, but somewhere along the way, I lost something. I have wealth, but no one to share it with. No legacy." Emma frowned. "And you think marrying a stranger will fix that?" "Not just any stranger," Nathaniel corrected. "You. Someone with grit, determination, and an ability to see people for who they are, not what they have. I see those qualities in you, Emma." Emma's heart pounded. His words were flattering, but they didn't ease her doubts. "You're asking me to gamble my entire future on you. What if this doesn't work out?" Nathaniel's expression softened. "That's why we'll start with an agreement. If at any point you feel this arrangement isn't for you, you're free to walk away. No strings, no repercussions." Emma blinked. "You're serious?" "Completely." Nathaniel slid a document across the table. "This outlines everything: financial support for your family, a monthly stipend for you, and an opportunity to pursue whatever dreams you've been putting on hold." Emma's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. "This is a lot." "It's a partnership," Nathaniel said. "I'm not offering charity, Emma. I'm investing in someone I believe in." The weight of his words settled over her, a mixture of hope and fear. Her dreams, the ones she'd buried beneath years of responsibility, flickered faintly in the back of her mind. She thought of her mother, their crumbling home, and the relentless cycle of bills. This could be her chance to break free. "I need time," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathaniel nodded. "Take all the time you need." Over the next few weeks, Emma's life took on an unusual rhythm. During the day, she worked at the diner as usual, her coworkers throwing curious glances her way whenever she drifted into silence. At night, she pored over the agreement Nathaniel had given her, weighing the risks and rewards. Maria, ever the voice of reason, wasn't shy about voicing her concerns. "This whole thing feels off, Emma. What if he's hiding something?" "Maybe he is," Emma admitted, "but what if he isn't? What if this is real? I can't keep living like this, Maria. Taking care of Mom, trying to keep the lights on. I'm drowning." Maria sighed, placing a comforting hand on Emma's shoulder. Just promise me you'll be careful. No matter what, you deserve to be happy." One evening, after a particularly grueling shift, Emma returned home to find her mother's breathing labored. Panic set in as she called for an ambulance, her heart shattering at the sight of her frail mother hooked up to oxygen in the emergency room. The doctor's words were a blur: complications from untreated diabetes, the need for constant care. Emma's shoulders slumped under the weight of a reality she could no longer ignore. The next morning, Emma called Nathaniel. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'll marry you." The whirlwind began almost immediately. Nathaniel arranged for Emma and her mother to move into a sprawling estate on the outskirts of town. The house was nothing short of palatial, with manicured gardens, marble floors, and a staff of discreet, efficient workers. Emma felt like a fish out of water, navigating a world she'd only seen in movies. Nathaniel, true to his word, ensured that Emma's mother received the best medical care money could buy. Specialists visited the house regularly, and a live-in nurse was hired to monitor her condition. Watching her mother regain strength brought Emma a sense of relief she hadn't felt in years. But for all the comfort and luxury, Emma couldn't shake the unease that came with her new life. Nathaniel was kind, attentive even, but there was a guardedness about him that left her questioning his motives. Their conversations were polite but rarely personal, and she often caught him staring into the distance, lost in thought. One evening, as they shared dinner in the grand dining room, Emma decided to confront him. "Nathaniel," she began, setting her fork down. "Why me? Out of all the people you could have chosen, why did you come to that diner?" Nathaniel's expression flickered, a shadow of something unspoken passing over his face. "Because you remind me of someone I once knew," he said after a long pause. "Someone who believed in me when no one else did." "Who?" Emma pressed. Nathaniel's gaze dropped to his hands. "My late wife. She saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself. I've been searching for that kind of connection ever since." Emma's heart ached at the vulnerability in his voice, but it also raised more questions. Was she truly the partner he sought, or a reflection of a past he couldn't let go? As weeks turned into months, Emma began to find her footing in her new world. Nathaniel encouraged her to pursue her passion for art, turning one of the estate's sunlit rooms into a private studio. For the first time in years, Emma allowed herself to dream. She sketched, painted, and even began planning a small gallery showcase in the city. But with every step forward, Emma couldn't ignore the secrets that seemed to lurk in the corners of Nathaniel's life. Late-night phone calls, locked rooms, and cryptic conversations left her feeling like an outsider in her marriage. Determined to uncover the truth, she resolved to dig deeper into Nathaniel's past, knowing that whatever she found could change everything. Little did she know, the answers she sought were closer than she realized, and far more shocking than she could have imagined. The estate was quiet, the kind of silence that felt unnerving rather than peaceful. Emma's footsteps echoed softly against the polished marble floors as she made her way down a corridor she rarely ventured into. Her heart pounded in her chest, her fingers tightening around the small key she'd found in Nathaniel's study. The key had been hidden in a drawer beneath stacks of neatly filed papers, all too intentionally placed to be an accident. She stopped in front of the heavy oak door at the end of the hallway. It was the one place Nathaniel had told her was off-limits, the only room in the estate she'd never seen. Her hand trembled as she inserted the key into the lock, the metallic click echoing louder than she expected. With a deep breath, she pushed the door open. The room was dimly lit, the curtains drawn over tall windows. Shelves lined the walls, filled with ledgers, photographs, and files. A large desk dominated the center of the room, its surface cluttered with more papers and a vintage lamp that cast a faint golden glow. Emma stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room for anything that could explain the gnawing sense of mystery surrounding Nathaniel. She picked up a leather-bound journal from the desk, her fingers tracing the embossed initials on the cover. Flipping it open, she was greeted by neat, deliberate handwriting. As she read, the pieces of Nathaniel's story began to fall into place. The journal chronicled his rise from poverty, his relentless ambition, and the love he'd found with his late wife, Eleanor. But as the entries progressed, the tone shifted. The writing became erratic, filled with grief and regret. One passage stopped Emma cold. Eleanor believed in me when no one else did. She saw the man I could be, not the man I was. But I failed her. I let my ambition consume me, and in the end, I couldn't save her. Now, every decision I make is a futile attempt to rewrite the past, to find redemption in someone who can see me as she did. Tears pricked Emma's eyes as she closed the journal, clutching it to her chest. She'd known Nathaniel was a man of secrets, but she hadn't understood the depth of his pain. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door creaking open behind her. "Emma?" Nathaniel's voice was low, tinged with a mixture of confusion and disappointment. She turned to find him standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. I found the key," she stammered, holding up the journal as if it were an explanation. "I needed to understand." Nathaniel stepped into the room, his cane tapping softly against the floor. "And what is it you think you found?" he asked, his tone guarded. "Your past," Emma said, her voice trembling. "Your pain." "Nathaniel, I see you, but I don't understand why you've kept all of this locked away. Why did you marry me? Was it just to fill the void she left?" Nathaniel's shoulders sagged, and for the first time, Emma saw the weight he carried. "When I met you, you reminded me of her," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not in appearance, but in spirit. Your resilience, your kindness, they brought me back to a part of myself I thought I'd lost. But no, Emma, I didn't marry you because of Eleanor. I married you because I saw a chance to build something new, something real." Emma's chest tightened as she searched his face for sincerity. "And what happens now?" she asked. "Do I just become another part of your legacy, another attempt to fix the past?" Nathaniel stepped closer, his eyes filled with something Emma hadn't seen before, vulnerability. "No," he said firmly. "You are not a replacement, Emma. You are the future. But I know I can't ask you to stay unless I'm willing to let go of the past." He gestured toward the desk. "Everything here, the journals, the plans, the regrets, they've held me captive for years. If you're willing to give me another chance, I'll let it all go. For you." Emma's throat tightened as she weighed his words. She didn't know if she could trust him completely, but at that moment, she saw a man who was trying, a man willing to confront his demons. Slowly, she nodded. "I'll stay," she said softly. "But only if we face the future together." Nathaniel's relief was palpable, his lips curving into a small, grateful smile. "Together," he promised. And for the first time, Emma felt like she wasn't stepping into someone else's life, but forging her path, one they would walk side by side. The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the estate, casting golden hues on the freshly polished floors. Emma stood by the window of her new studio, the easel in front of her bearing a half-finished painting of a vibrant countryside scene. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of change, but for the first time in years, Emma felt a sense of peace, tentative but real. Nathaniel had kept his promise. The journals, the locked doors, and the secrets that had once defined him were now things of the past. Together, they had cleared out the room that had held so much of his history. The shelves were now empty, the desk gone. Instead, the space had been transformed into an open, sunlit room, a new beginning for both of them. As Emma dipped her brush into a palette of soft greens, she heard the familiar tap of Nathaniel's cane approaching. She turned to see him standing in the doorway, a tray of coffee and pastries balanced carefully in his hands. "Thought you might need a break," he said with a smile, his tone light. Emma laughed, setting her brush down. "You're going to spoil me." "That's the idea," Nathaniel replied, setting the tray on a nearby table. "How's the masterpiece coming along?" She glanced at the canvas, her expression thoughtful. It's getting there. Still, a lot of work to do, but I'm excited about it. Nathaniel stepped closer, studying the painting. It's beautiful. Just like the woman who painted it. Emma blushed, swatting him playfully. Flattery will get you nowhere. Won't it? He teased, his eyes sparkling. They shared a laugh, the kind that came easily now, free of the tension that had once lingered between them. Their relationship had grown stronger since the night Emma unlocked the door to Nathaniel's past. There had been hard conversations, moments of doubt, and days where trust felt like a fragile thing. But step by step, they'd built something solid, something that felt genuine. Nathaniel's guarded demeanor had softened, and Emma had learned to trust not just him but herself. Beyond the estate, their lives had also started to intertwine with the world in meaningful ways. Nathaniel had used his resources to fund community art programs, inspired by Emma's passion for creativity. They'd hosted workshops at the estate, inviting local artists to teach and share their work. For Emma, seeing others find joy and purpose in art was more fulfilling than she'd ever imagined. One afternoon, as they prepared for an open house at the studio, Emma's mother arrived. Her health had improved significantly, thanks to the care Nathaniel had arranged. She walked through the space, her eyes bright with pride as she admired her daughter's work. "You've built something amazing here, Emma," her mother said, her voice thick with emotion. "And you've found someone who truly sees you." Emma glanced at Nathaniel, who was helping an artist set up their display. He caught her eye and gave her a warm smile, one that still made her heart skip a beat. "Yeah," Emma said softly. "I think I have." As the open house began, the studio filled with people, neighbors, artists, and even a few of Emma's former co-workers from the diner. Maria arrived with a tray of cookies, her grin wide as she hugged Emma tightly. "Look at you," Maria said, her voice full of pride. "You're a regular Texan Picasso now." Emma laughed. "Hardly, but thank you." As the evening wound down, Nathaniel stood by Emma's side, watching as the last few guests lingered. He took her hand in his grip warm and steady. "Emma," he said softly, "I never thought I'd get a second chance at happiness. But you've given me that and so much more." Emma looked up at him, her eyes shining. "I think we gave each other a second chance," she replied. "And I wouldn't trade it for anything." In the months that followed, Emma's studio became a beacon of creativity and connection. Nathaniel continued to support her dreams, but he also found fulfillment in her world. Together, they built not just a life, but a legacy, one rooted in hope, resilience, and the belief that love could bloom even in the unlikeliest of places. As they stood on the balcony of the estate one evening, watching the sunset over the horizon, Emma realized that her life was no longer a series of struggles or compromises. It was a canvas, one she could fill with endless possibilities, and she was finally ready to paint it.